us on another episode of Hot Topics. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode with our special guest, Captain Luter, as we talked about the war. But this week, we're back to focusing on education reform. Ronald Burgundy has the story.
The Subcommittee on Education Reform called the press conference on December 1st, 2009, to give their report that will be presented to Congress in hopes of fixing the problems with No Child Left Behind. Committee Chairman and Democrat Senator from Connecticut, Bobby Patton, introduced the changes.
The two biggest changes that we have decided to put in is national standards and a merit-based pay option for every teacher. Those two principles are what really is needed to make this a good bill that really gives every child in this country a quality education. So what we'd like to see happen is more of a grading scale for every school. That way people will be able to know if the school's not meeting AYP, but they're just barely missing it, you'll know because of the grading scale. And if a school is horribly just off AYP, you'll be able to know that too, because we'll have a very specific grading scale in place. And another thing we'd also like to change is the fact that as the bill is now, any student can transfer schools if one subgroup in that school doesn't meet AYP, even if it's not their subgroup. We'd like to see it happen that students can only transfer out of their school if their specific subgroup is not meeting AYP.
The floor was then yielded to Senators Eric Dixon and Ashley Bargle to go into more detail about the changes.
Many policy efforts have failed in the past to raise the status of the teaching profession in America, as it so deserves, and this subcommittee's proposal does just that. It will shape the quality of teachers we have in schools across this country. It's called the Teacher Advancement Program, TAP for short. And like I said, it's a merit-based pay option for teachers, and it's been very, very successful. Test scores have gone up significantly just after its implementation it started in 2002 in New Orleans and Cincinnati. But the proposal that we have, it's a federal contract with states that will provide teachers with the following salary options. One, teachers have the option to retain their tenure, which will provide security for teachers who want it, and remain in their unions. Second, it will provide an option for a highly called for option for educators to give up their tenure and be placed on a higher paying, merit-based pay scale.
Education reform in America is at a breaking point. Until now, the race has been going nowhere but to the bottom. We believe creating a national standard will provide a level playing field for all states. Currently, states are being rewarded for meeting goals that are based on inefficient, low test scores. To capture the support of all states, we believe states should be given the right to make their own curriculum, but in accordance to the national standards set by Congress. Even though states will have the right to create their own curriculum, standardized testing responsibilities will be given to the National Department of Education. Test scores from 3rd grade to 8th grade will measure a student's progress, and with these changes, education in America will begin to go to the top without leaving a child behind.
The new proposals still left those in attendance with many questions. Questions that were able to be answered during a question and answer session with the committee immediately following the report.
I know that we certainly don't want the federal government telling us which textbooks we need to use to teach our children and things of that nature. However, when taking that into consideration with the potential benefit of a national standard so that we can judge where our progress is comparatively speaking to the other states in the union, the benefit of that outweighs the potential risk of involving the federal government further.
The way that teachers will be measured is actually going to take a step aside from a sole reliance on standardized test scores. Teachers will be graded on the scores of their students, the test scores of their standardized tests, the scores that their school makes, which is going to provide teamwork among teachers to cooperate and teach as effectively as they can. And it's also going to include a peer review among teachers and administrators. So they will be judged on standardized test scores as well as a variety of factors, which we definitely think was called for in the hearing as far as taking a step aside from sole reliance on standardized tests.
Basically, we're going to take the schools that just are we're going to start with the schools that are just barely failing, that are just barely missing their AYP scores. And they're going to be put into, let's say, a higher of the low grades. And from there, we're going to work our way down, dividing it up as we feel necessary to get all the way to the failing schools that are just absolutely failing. And that way, teachers will know, and students and parents will know, if their school's just barely missing it, then maybe it'll be easier to fix, and we can not have to worry about it so much and maybe not have to transfer.
I mean, we are not going to assign books, but we want at least the curriculum to be aligned with that of the national standards.
Okay.
It's not assigning books to states on what curriculum they show.
The merit-based option pay scale is not to serve as a punishment for teachers who aren't meeting the AYP. It's meant as a reward for those teachers who are truly improving our schools. That's why we would like to put this in place.
The future is now out of the committee's hands, and it is now up to Congress to take action. The committee did say that although these changes are a step in the right direction, this is only the beginning. Ronald Burgundy, Fox News.
Really, I don't look at this as the end of changing this bill. I really look at this as the beginning because we still have a lot of work to do.
Thanks, Ronald. And coming up next, we have special guest Senator Eric Dixon from Pennsylvania. But first, a quick commercial break.
Hi, I'm Eric Dixon, star of The Third Lennon, and we're here on the set of The Third Lennon. Just letting you guys know that I always use Gillette and always use Norelco lasers.
And welcome back. As you can see, we are pleased to be joined by Senator Eric Dixon. Thank you for being with us today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Matt.
Okay, can you just give us a little overview of your opinions on how the report and the committee hearing went?
Well, we still have a few more steps to take as a subcommittee and to propose it to the Senate at large. But after the press release today, I feel very confident about the changes that have been proposed as far as national standards and specifically the merit-based pay, as far as in addition to a few changes to the AYP. But I'm very confident about it, and I'm very confident that it will close the achievement gap if it is passed through the Senate and the House as well.
Okay, can you give us some opinions of something maybe you wanted to see done that didn't get done in the report that you would like to see happen in the future?
To be honest with you, the merit-based pay option and the teacher salary option, that was my biggest factor that I wanted to see added to the legislation. I did a lot of, I made sure that I showed my support for that and that I let my fellow subcommittee members know how much it would help, and that has been put in the proposal. So I've seen what I would like to see. Other than that, maybe an addition of charter schools. We talked about that and it wasn't added specifically, but we still have a few more steps to take, so we'll see if it is added.
Okay. Can you explain a little bit about how this hearing and subcommittee report is going to affect education reform in the future?
Well, like I said, if this bill does become a law eventually and it includes our proposals, then I'm extremely confident that over the next 5 years it will make major changes. I think if it becomes a law in the first year, nothing very, very large is going to happen in the first year because for this bill to be implemented, you're going to see the states are going to have to take tests, and a lot of the schools and students taking the national test aren't going to be proficient according to national standards. But if we implement this policy, we'll see significant change over the next 5 years. And say 5 or 10 years out from now, we're going to have the envy of the world as far as our educational system goes.
Okay, and finally, last question. Do you have any just final remarks about the hearing or the report that you would like people to know?
I would just like to thank Chairman Patton and Representative Carroll for being such good leaders in our subcommittee and being so accommodating to some of the ideas that we had. So I really appreciate it, and thanks for having me.
And thank you, Senator Dixon. I hope you guys have all enjoyed this week's episode of Hot Topics, and I hope you join us next week as we have special guest and National Forest expert Elizabeth Williams here to talk with us. Thank you for watching, and have a great week.